Hello everyone and welcome back to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. What a weekend and weekday of racing we've just had at the Dublin Racing Festival in particular, and two men who were both on site, Steve Ryder and Dan Overall alongside me. Dan, I'll start with you. Welcome to the show. Tell me about the 2 days and the overall impression of how important you think it was as a guide, but also how much you just enjoyed the 2 days.
Oh, it's my favourite 2 days of the racing calendar now. I've been there the last few years. It brings together a great combination of proper Grade 1 racing and then some impossibly tricky handicaps, which every year I go in thinking quite confident about. Always ends in disaster. But I think this year, obviously, the ground conditions, I think it's left us with more questions than answers now moving into the spring festivals. Obviously, traditionally, you'd say it is the major 2 days leading into Cheltenham. But now, a lot of heavy ground form potentially going into spring ground. Big talking horses disappointing. I think we're going to be in for a very intriguing March, and maybe the DRF didn't give us all the answers ahead of the spring.
All right. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But Steve, the dexterity that officials showed to get the 2 days on, considering the amount of rain they had and the abandonment of what was planned for Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, they tried everything, didn't they? And the communication, I think, was the good part of it. You always felt in the loop, and as disappointing as it was to wake up on Saturday morning to see that it had been cancelled, you know that they did everything they could to possibly get it on, and it just meant that more time in the pub, more football matches watching, went to the dogs, and just explored more of Dublin.
There were just places to be, aren't there?
Exactly. There were just groups of lads just wandering around Dublin, just lost for a few hours of what they actually were going to do. And I thought everyone, including obviously the dog track, being able to go, right, okay, anyone with a ticket, in you go free. I mean, it was rammed, like 20 deep at the bar.
And of course, we all saw on social media that Steve's got a pretty good singing voice.
Yeah, unbelievably so, yeah.
Yes, that's now become a tradition as well. So, yeah, we'll see how many...
Bye-bye, Miss American Pie.
Yeah.
Superb. Excellent. Maybe we get you singing on Racing Weekly for...
Maybe I better give another week for the voice to come back a little bit.
Okay. All right. Let's get into racing recap because there's a lot to talk about from the DRF. Let's start with the big race on what was the first day of the Dublin Racing Festival, and that was the Irish Champion Hurdle, billed as a clash between Lossiemouth and Brighterdaysahead, and Brighterdaysahead overturned the form from Christmas. How did you read it?
She is just extremely effective at that trip on heavy ground when it's a real galloping test. I don't think she really has a turn of foot that we've probably looking towards a Champion Hurdle that might prove against her. But I think when Cashildale Lad came out, I was a bit concerned tactically how that would pan out, because he was going to act as the initial pace setter. She would sit in behind, probably take it up at halfway. And blessing for Gordon Elliott and team that El Fabiolo fulfilled that role to a T, really. And it enabled her to just play to her strengths. Lossiemouth looked uncomfortable from an early stage. I think jumping the third hurdle, you were pretty much knew your fate. And she somewhat did well to even look like she'd threatened to get involved after 2 out. But these were Brighterdaysahead conditions, I think. Absolute optimal, proper galloper, nothing can get into it. How that translates to a Champion Hurdle, I wouldn't be so sure, but she wouldn't be for me in March. All
right, I'll come back to you on the Champion Hurdle market. Your reading of the Irish Champion Hurdle, similar to Dan's?
Yeah, I thought she was beaten pretty much jumping the first hurdle. It kind of reminisced back to Kempton with Constitution Hill, and normally she just takes a hold of the bit. Even last year when she was against State Man and they went that furious gallop, she was comfortable going that sort of gallop. And from an early stage, I thought she was in trouble. Like Dan said, it was as if Gordon Elliott had employed JJ Slevin to be a pacemaker on El Fabiolo. They went a fast pace. I mean, the finishing speed percentage was 94%. They were crawling. I think the final furlong was a pedestrian 18.62 seconds. Like, they really were crawling towards the finish. And you'd slightly have a couple of doubts around Brighterdaysahead going into a Champion Hurdle. Number one, the track, but more so for me, can she back up this effort? She seemed to kind of leave her season behind last year after that brilliant win in the December Hurdle, let alone at the Dublin Racing Festival prior to that race.
Well, let's talk about the Champion Hurdle market. The new line is 2-1 favourite with Bet365. And for those of you, Brian in particular, who always mentions, yes, Bet365 are involved with this programme, so they're going to get a mention or two. So the new line is a 2-1 favourite. Brighterdaysahead 5-2, Constitution Hill 9-2, Lossiemouth is 6-1, Golden Ace 7-1. Ballyburn 16s, Amsterdam 20s, along with Poneros and El Fabiolo 33s. A, is that the right favourite, the new line? And B, who is the leading hurdler over 2 miles right now?
it's like one of the races,
same thing?
Races we discussed earlier about more questions than answers. This is the prime example of it. I mean, he's probably the right favourite based on potential and upside, somewhat maybe reminiscent of when Epatante won, in terms of there are going to be doubts going into it, but he's the one who might have more improvement. But his golden ace now, just not the clear standout that's overpriced. Like, we know she acts there, she keeps getting overlooked, and everything else you're going to have questions about, really. She's probably the only one without a serious question to answer, albeit she's probably going to go to the Kingwell on route, so again, there could be another flipping of the script there, but markets in that. We've got a horse who's running at Southwell on the all-weather, who's third in and can't jump a hurdle anymore, seemingly. What a race.
Well, the point, I mean, you can imagine Connections of Golden Ace. Like, the one question that they kept getting, or keep getting asked is, you know, why is she so lucky? How is she so lucky? Is she the best? She's obviously, every time she goes up against the New Lion or Constitution Hill or whoever, they always say, well, they're better, and if they run their race, she's not going to win. But actually, circumstances seem to fall her way. Is the New Lion the best horse in the race?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I still think Lossiemouth is the best horse in the race, if I'm being completely honest. And I know I'm going to drive people mad with this, but she is a different horse going into Cheltenham. I've been saying it on the last 2 runs at Leopardstown. I do think she's just so much better in March at Cheltenham as opposed to at Leopardstown. The fact that she probably now won't run in it is the huge issue. But is Willie Mullins really going to rely on something like Ballyburn at 16s in a champion hurdle rather than the mares? I'm still not sure. So yeah, I'm still going to be.
So you're a Lossiemouth player at this stage.
100%. For her to still finish that close, having been beaten after the first hurdle, in my opinion, I thought was a brilliant run.
And it would be a bit of a shambles, really, if she's got form figures of the leading 2-mile race in Ireland of 1-1-2, and actually not beaten all that far in the end when everything basically went wrong for her, and she doesn't end up in the champion hurdle. Like, I think if she's not in the race on Tuesday, immediately there should be a BHA announcement 1 minute after declarations. Next year, changes to the mare's hurdle means she can't run there. Because we need these horses in these big races.
I'm a massive fan of Woodoo as well. And there may be an argument now, 2-4, is it now 2-5 on the new course?
Yep.
Like, is it going to actually be an easier task to try and reverse form with Brighter Days Ahead and beat the New Lion in the champion hurdle than it is to beat Woodoo in the mares? That's a bold call, but I wouldn't be far off saying that it might be an easier contest.
Okay. Well, no doubt. Between now and the Cheltenham Festival, we'll hear lots of toing and froing about Connections re Lossiemouth, and there's still so much more to come, clues-wise. I mean, who can't wait for that race at Southwell on the all-weather to find out about Constitution Hill? Okay, let's turn our attention to the 2-mile chasing division, and the Dublin Chase went the way of Madgeborough. For a very long time, people have said Madgeborough is a superstar in waiting. First-time cheek pieces, was that the coming of age for Madgeborough? I know you've been a big fan since he was over hurdles.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. I love the horse. I fell in love with him 2 years ago when he was beaten in the Spring Juvenile, and I was one of the people that just getting slated for saying that he's not too bad of a jumper. I mean, jump index 9.5 here, thanks. Yeah, I thought he was brilliant. It was like the cheek pieces helped him in more ways than just his jumping, just the way that he'd concentrate going into his fences. He was not keen, but in Mark Walsh's hands, and you could just do whatever you like with him. I think the slower conditions helped him going that pace slower, and I do actually still think that going up in trip would see a better horse, but there's plenty of time for that going forward as well. His is in the mould of an Altior or a Shiskin that he can just still win at 2-mile pace, but I think it'd be better going up in trip. But yeah, left-handed, Cheltenham hopefully rights the wrongs of the Arkle from last year.
Well, going into the race, a lot of talk involving Marine Nationale. He's the Queen Mother Champion Chase winner. After the race, obviously, Barry Connell made the point that he didn't enjoy the ground and that they had to run. He felt he owed it to the race. And then one or two people were saying to me, immediately after the race, that they felt the race fell apart. Do you feel that that was the case, or was Madgeborough just too good?
I think in a similar vein to Brighter Days Ahead and the Irish Champion, I think all the circumstances conspired in Madgeborough's favour here. And there was a potential for that to happen in that obviously Marine Nationale we know doesn't act really on heavy, and as Barry then said, I kind of get a run into him. We know March is going to be his main aim. Solness kind of missed the start, never in his usual rhythm, also doesn't like the ground, and it allowed Majborough out in front to get into a rhythm we haven't really seen him in before. And I thought the post-race comments about Mark Walsh wanted to ride him that way before, the Mullins team have asked him to maybe be a bit more conservative in his last couple of starts, maybe to get him to race a bit more efficiently with a view to the long run. But seemingly that's the way to get the best out of him. Heavy ground, 2 mile one, and like Steve, he's going to get further. Like, he is still a staying 2 miler who I think next year probably ends up in a Ryanair. And realistically, if he was going to continue over 2 miles for the short term, he had to win there, just with the way the race has transpired. Cheltenham's going to be a very different kettle of fish. And again, good to soft ground. That's going to be Marine Nationale territory. And I think if it comes up as a typical champion chase, I still fancy Marine to reverse that form.
Okay. Majborough, 13-8 favourite with Bet365. Marine Nationale, 2-1. Il Était Temps, 8-1. Le Sud, 8-1. Quilixios, 16s. Founder, 50-20s. John Bond, 20s. Sort of reaching after that. Are you keen? Would you, if you hadn't got involved or if you haven't been involved with Majborough so far, is 13-8 attractive enough for the champion chase?
No, I think there'll be plenty of people taking him on. It wouldn't surprise me if Marine Nationale went off favourite on the day, and at that point, Majborough may well then become a bet at those prices. But no, I was more confident about him at Leopardstown than I was at Cheltenham.
Okay. And your Marine Nationale
presuming it's typical kind of good to soft, no worse than soft in places ground. I think that's his forte.
Yeah.
Majborough, 2 mile one soft, that was perfect for him.
Okay. Well, I was quite keen on Le Sud for the Queen Mother Champion Chase, going there fresh, but after Majborough's win, I'm a bit shaken, I must admit.
Yeah, he's going to need some others to underperform, but I mean, he'll be bang right for the day. He'll sit off what is likely to be a strong pace. So he likes a Quilixios coming back, Solness, you would imagine. They should be able to tow him into the race, but also the likes of Marine Nationale.
Yeah.
One thing I've tried to learn with the champion chase in recent years, it's never what we end up expecting it to be in most years.
Yeah.
It tends to be, this can be a great rematch between the two, and Quilixios will come out and bolt up, and you just be like, how's it happened again? It's been that race for me in the last few years.
Anyway, why should I be worried about Majborough? I mean, everybody beats Marine Nationale. 8 lengths or so. Let's move on and talk about the Irish Gold Cup, which we all believed was going to be a big pointer to the Cheltenham Gold Cup. Well, the horse that won it isn't even entered in the race, and that's Fact to File. And I must admit, watching the race, I was happy for the horse, but I was heartbroken for myself. I have been a Fact to File fan for such a long time, and I didn't think that we would see him at his best over this trip. And I thought maybe he was running here just to get him back on track before Cheltenham. I didn't expect to see a performance like that.
I was exactly with you in that sense. I thought if he travelled into the race, as he has done on previous occasions, 3 miles around Leopardstown, and ended up just sort of fading into a fourth, perfect, bang on Ryanair, He'll be odds on for that. Hang on, what's happened here? And it did feel a bit like the passing of the torch to a certain extent, with the younger, or not massively younger, Fact to File and Gaelic Warrior sort of coming through to take it off Galopin Des Champs, who has run a perfectly honest race, but again was in the perfect position, ground in his favour. He's run perfectly up to a fine level, but maybe he's just not at that top level. And Fact to File maybe now is finally developed into a proper 3 miler somehow. And then you've got Gaelic Warrior running 2 keen in behind. Yeah. Are we now going to be this toing and froing, and Gaelic Warrior ends up in the Ryanair rather than Fact to File? Because the way they were talking post-race, I think there's still a lot of faith in Galopin Des Champs from what Willie Mullins was saying, that Christmas took a lot out of him. He might well improve for that. And would Paul Townend give up that ride on Galopin Des Champs in a Gold Cup? Mark Walsh may be on Fact to File for a Gold Cup. If he's supplemented, then Paul can ride Gaelic Warrior in the Ryanair. It's a classic game of Willie Mullins bingo. And normally it's earlier in the season we have these headaches, but this is now a real dilemma.
It was a terrific race. And I think a couple of the points that Dan makes is that the best of Galopin Des Champs now? Do you think that there is still a chance he could win the Gold Cup? As in, as good a chance as there was maybe people thinking at the beginning of the season or after the first run? Do you think his hopes have been dented by this performance? And do you believe what you've seen from Fact to File?
I mean, which Fact to File turns up? That's now going to be the issue in all of these stay-in Grade 1 chases, because he is arguably one of the most talented horses in training, but you don't get to see it that often. That win in the Ryanair, for me, was the highlight of the whole festival last year. Yeah. But you then had attitude doubts about him not going past Gaelic Warrior, then seemed to be completely sulking at Kempton in the King George, but this was brilliant. I mean, I obviously had my eye on Galopin Des Champs through the race, and I was fairly happy until 3 out. And then suddenly you look to the inside, and Mark Walsh is there, absolutely swinging, wings the second last, and still at that point you go, yeah, but are you going to stay?
Exactly.
And just went further and further and further clear. I mean, he didn't jump the last like a tired horse, did he? I mean, I think you've got to run in a Gold Cup, especially given how JP's other horses have ran. I know the way you're thinking. I mean, that's going to be an almighty effort to try and even get him back to running in the race, in my opinion. I think Factifile has to go for a Gold Cup. Yeah. If I was Paul Townend, I'd want to be hopping on to Gaelic Warrior in a Gold Cup rather than Galopin. I was keen on Galopin for this race. I think he's just a better horse at Leopardstown than what he is at Cheltenham. I thought he had his conditions as well that would have suited him. I know he didn't have the lead for the whole way, but Affordale Fury pretty much passed the baton to him, and I thought he had the perfect setup in order to win for the 4th time, if good enough, and he wasn't good enough. But Gaelic Warrior ran a remarkable race. I mean, tried to settle, winged the first, and then just got far too keen. Yeah. And I'd want to be riding him in a Gold Cup.
I thought the way he was ridden, Gaelic Warrior, was very desperate to hold on to him through the race. I mean, a lot of his best performances have come when they just let him roll. You mentioned the race at the start of the season with Factifile. And I thought, why not let him roll? But I suppose, they've got so many horses they want to be...
If you also upgrade his previous Leopardstown form to how he steps forward from Leopardstown generally to going towards Cheltenham, I mean...
He's actually become now quite consistent.
He has, hasn't he?
Absolutely. We're now looking at Factifile. He's the in and out one because it's not him only. Obviously, we looked at the John Durkin, then the King George where it didn't happen, but then go back to Punchestown, drop back to 2 miles. But the speed he showed, it shouldn't have been an issue, and he never went a yard that day. So he's the in and out one of the two now. Gaelic Warrior's suddenly Mr. Consistent in comparison, and it is just that early keenness still, and he's not really getting it in that sense. And I guess that would be a concern in the Gold Cup. And Patrick, before his arms were being pulled out at halfway, started in rear, he's borderline chasing the leaders with 1.5 miles to go. That wouldn't have been the plan at Offset.
Yeah. Further in behind, I thought Monty Stark was great to see him run
great run.
a race. I was a massive fan of him earlier on and kind of given up with him. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. So Iron Maximus is now going to come into the Grand National in better form than he has done previously. That race, obviously, we know suits well. But I was really impressed with what Firefox did in 4th. But are we just missing the obvious here? And we need to start backing Iroko for the Ultima because Iroko beat him comfortably at Ascot. He's still 20-1 with Bet365 for the Ultima. Yeah. Especially now with Jericho de Repene getting dropped to 145, you'd imagine he's going to be Kim Muirbound. And obviously it's after the Grand National weights. I'm kind of now talking myself into a bet on Iroko in the Ultima.
I guess you're always doing it with the caveat that this isn't the ultimate end goal.
But the weights are already out for the National, aren't they?
Yeah, but is he going to be absolutely drilled for a race before the National? I mean, if he goes there, he'll be towards the head of the betting because it's still a bit of a muddling market, that ultimate betting. But very interesting.
I thought Sean Bowen's ride on Firefox, one of the best of the whole meeting. Yeah. The way he rode him, I think that obviously benefited the horse, the pace they went, and he sat in behind and just let him creep into it. Even when the pace started picking up, he didn't get too excited, he just let him, and that was his skill. But I want to bring the Gold Cup market to you both, and you can tell me what you'd play if you had to. Factifile, who needs to be supplemented, 4-1 favourite with Bet365. Django Bay, 5-1. The Jukebox Man, 6-1. Gaelic Warrior, 7s. Galopin's 10s. Same price as Haiti Calor, who's due to run this weekend. Spillans Tower, 14s. Grey Dawning, 16s. I know the way you're thinking, 16s. And I'll just mention one other just because of who he is, but Envoy Alain is 40-1. What would you play right now?
I think as it stands now, the probably one with the least questions to answer in my book would maybe be Django Bay as the progressive second season chaser. The King George, I think, is a muddling piece of form. I'm not taking that literally, but what he did before then, his overall body of work would be that of a typical Gold Cup winner first time, whereas are we still in the position to believe Factifile? Some of the others I don't think are quite up to it, but I think Django Bay right now for me, who obviously we might see this weekend.
Okay, all right. What about you, Steve?
I'd agree, yeah. I think Django Bay's completely solid. But if Gaelic Warriors to run in the race and has P Townend dropped up, I would. He'd definitely be carrying my money.
Okay. Well, the likelihood is that we've still got more debating to go about because we don't even know who's going to run where. Will Factifile definitely go for the Gold Cup? I'd say he should do. Will Gaelic Warrior definitely go for it? Who knows? We'll be talking more about it in weeks to come for absolutely sure. The meeting obviously started off with a very fine performance from Talk the Talk, who beat Ballyfad by a short head in that 2 3/4 mile, in the 2 mile novice hurdle. I thought the way the race was run, it really lent itself to Talk the Talk's performance being rated much more than just the winning margin of a short head.
Yeah, finishing speed percentage of 113%. It paid to be up with the pace, didn't it? And he was the only one really to make headway from the back. He beat the right horses as well. The main 3 contenders fought out the finish, albeit that Le Devant and Fon ended up going off a shorter price than King Rasco Bray in the end.
Really well back, wasn't it?
Really well back. But watching this race reminded me of a couple of years ago, Ballyburn beating Sladestead and thinking, actually, we could see a Supreme winner and a Turner's winner here. Because I thought this was the strongest Grade 1 novice hurdle coming in to the Dublin Racing Festival. And I wouldn't forget about Skylight Hustle as well, who obviously didn't run at the meeting, but obviously benefited from Talk the Talk winning last time. I did a bit of a review for Racing TV afterwards, and Talk the Talk was 10s at the time, and Skylight Hustle was 25s for the Turners. And it was one of those kind of bets where you go, okay, Skylight Hustle's going to go up in trip. If I rate that piece of form, I've kind of got to back the contingency double, really. But then Gordon Elliott said, we might go up in trip with Ballyfad. And that's going to be another kind of element to it, is does Gordon Elliott and Jack Kennedy have that much faith in El Kairos that that's then going to be their supreme horse, and then they're going to chuck 2 or 3 into the Turners, which looks a more open contest this year. But I was really impressed with Talk the Talk, and I think the Supreme is going to be a strong race this year, as it normally is.
Yeah. We'll come to the market for the Supreme in just a moment, so I can read out some more Bet365 prices. What did you make of Talk the Talk beating Ballyfad?
As a Ballyfad backer, I wasn't best pleased. And I was watching it with a friend of mine who was adamant, I think we've got that. Ballyfad stayed on the line. I was like, you're unbelievably confident. I have no confidence whatsoever. And the cameraman at Leopardstown as well was solely focused on Ballyfad.
Yeah.
That was just cruel. He's clearly done his stones as well on Ballyfad there. I love Ballyfad's attitude, I tell you. I don't think he would have had the natural ability to repel Talk the Talk, even if the race panned out differently. But the fact he was able to repel King Rasco Gray, he'll have a future just with his attitude going forward. But Talk the Talk is the one to take out of the race. Everything kind of conspired against him. His jumping in previous starts has been sloppy. He's done a few things wrong. He's clearly improving. And when he needed a jump at the last this day, he really got one. He winged it and needed every bit of that jump to get up here. He's improving. They're very confident. I think he'll improve again. I wouldn't be as bullish on the strength of this form in general as Steve would be. I was definitely the better of the novice hurdles in terms of structure and depth. I wasn't overly enamoured with the form at Christmas in terms of the overall picture, and therefore, because of Ballyfad and where Talk the Talk is, I can't have this necessarily as a real standout novice performance going into Cheltenham.
Okay.
I still think Old Park Star is definitely the one to beat in Supreme. The market would tell you that anyway. I think his performance still stands a level above what Talk the Talk has done, but you cannot grade Talk the Talk just due to the start of the race.
Well, Old Park Star is a 2-1 favourite. Talk the Talk 5s, El Kairos 11-2, Ballyfad 8, King Rasco Grade 12s. My Daddy Paddy, who was as short as 5s, wasn't he, earlier in the season? He's 12s now. Leader Dalier 14s, Mighty Park 14s. Idaho Sun, obviously beat My Daddy Paddy, is 16s, 20s, bar those. What's your play in the Supreme?
Yeah, I like Talk the Talk. The fact that they started him off early on that better ground makes me optimistic of the fact that we might actually see better again when he goes back onto that better ground in comparison to this heavy ground that he encountered here. The fact he won despite that, I think, yeah.
Old Park Star.
Yeah, and interestingly, such a lack of Mullins' presence in the Supreme.
Yeah.
Like, who's the Supreme horse? It might well end up being Leader Dalier or something.
Yeah.
Very confusing picture.
One or two people mentioned about Old Park Star should go for the champion hurdle.
Jesus, he gets a
Steady. Yeah, very Nicky Henderson, that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's right in his playbook. The other novice hurdle that you talked about, the 2 3/4 mile one, Dr. Steinberg, how impressed were you by him?
I think if they were to tell, if someone was to tell Willie Mullins and the team that going into Cheltenham, your really one fancied novice hurdler for the week would be Dr. Steinberg at the start of the season, I think they would assume you were pulling both legs, not just one. It's quite remarkable how he's developed and improved, because he was a real plodder, really, for what he's shown mostly. And then all of a sudden at the weekend, he's pulling Paul's arms out, really keen, and still managing to maintain the gallop. A few people I was with all on Bartlett slips for him. I think we're getting a bit nervy with the way and the style of the performance that please put him at 3 miles and not dropping down in trip. I think actually when you look at the figures, it is more of the performance of a Bartlett horse. He's not quickened. He's just been able to maintain a gallop where others haven't. The depth of the race I don't think is particularly great. I think Kazansky is an out-and-out plodder who will probably be maybe like an Irish national horse in time. He's a real out-and-out stayer. A few in behind disappointed. Very impressed with him. 5-2 for the Albert Bartlett, is it? That's very, very short for a Bartlett. I mean, he can't be much shorter on the day, can he? So he's the leading player in that market for it, and it's a fair performance, but I don't think now's the time to be playing at that price.
It's a race that's rich with big priced winners historically, you know. So, but he is a 5-2 favourite. Is he a worthy 5-2 favourite, judged on that performance that we saw at the weekend?
I think he's a worthy favourite. Whether he's a worthy 5-2 favourite, I'd probably question. This is as slow as he'll go in his career, though. If you think about how fast they're going to be going in the race, this is 2 miles 6 on heavy ground, and even a 3 mile Albert Bartlett, they'll be going a couple of miles an hour faster, which should give him the opportunity to settle, really. I thought his jumping warmed up as well. I thought it was really, really good at the last, when, as we saw in one of the handicap hurdles on the day, if you meet the last slightly wrong, it gives the others an opportunity to come back. And like Dan said, Kazansky was going to stay all the way to the line, and just the fact that he winged the last, had plenty of energy and stretched clear at the finish, I was impressed, but I'm not in a rush to back 5-2.
Okay. Let's talk about the juveniles over hurdles. Narciso has overturned the form with Manche 2. Manche 2 actually got passed in the closing stages by Selma de Varry. Overall, I think, would it be fair to say that Narciso has grown up quite a lot through the season and is more and more the finished article?
I love this horse. He does everything, doesn't he? He jumps, he settles, he stays, he quickens. I think he just has it all. I was slightly wary of him for this race. I thought the new course at Cheltenham is absolutely made for him, being a staying juvenile. I think he's got gears. I genuinely think he's got everything. I think he's one of the favourites for the Cheltenham Festival that could shorten considerably going into it, because
he's 6-4.
Yeah, I think he could go off odds on the day. I really do. I was so impressed with what he did at Christmas. I was even more impressed with how he managed to beat what looked a strong field on paper here as well. And yeah, I'm not in a rush to oppose him.
Right. Are you as impressed?
He's very reminiscent of Mashborough in a few ways, in that he's a proper staying juvenile hurdler. Yeah. If JP Silk's a 4-year-old for Willie Mullins, and he's a bit of a, he's going to end up getting further in time, then Steve has a love affair straight away. Look out for the next one next year as well, I suppose. No, he's very good. I say the new course is going to be made for him in terms of his stamina. I was really impressed by Selma de Varry, though, as a first start. I mean, not only that, Narciso has joined them in sort of April time. Like, he has a lot of time to acclimatise. A lot earlier than traditionally Willie Mullins have his juveniles out. She only ran 3 months ago at Auteuil. She had no time really to acclimatise to that system. So to be able to actually briefly look like she might threaten when Paul switched her out, I thought that was an eye-catching debut, to say the absolute least. And I think she's around the 8-1 mark now.
She is 8-1 indeed.
So I think that's a point bigger than Proactive, same price as Maestro Conti.
Yeah.
There's only one horse I'm backing of those three. If in opposition, it would be Selma de Varry. North Shore in fourth, very interesting. If they get one more run in, potentially something to a Fred Winter.
Yeah.
I think Barbazon may have got a mark of like 129 now. He's qualified for that race as well. So you'd be looking at the Fred Winter for those in behind. But this is the standout form going into the Triumph Hurdle by some distance. Yeah. And I'd say Steve is probably right. I think Narciso may well end up going off even money 10-11. But Selma de Varry is no back number. One run, that would be the objective, I think.
Okay. This time last week, when we were talking about the Irish Arkle, we were looking forward to Kopeck de Board against Romeo Coolio. That never materialised, no Kopeck de Board, but Romeo Coolio won a 3-runner race against Cargesi, and for a while in the race, it did look as if he was in serious trouble. Really
serious trouble, and it sort of panned out to a certain extent how I'd expected, in that I didn't think Jack was going to allow Paul on Cargesi to get too far ahead, and that might end up becoming a real slog, because he's going to force Cargesi to not ever get a breather in. Turning in, Cargesi is obviously going slightly better, but in a few strides, Romeo Coolio's then looking like he's going to win going away 5-6 lengths. And in the end, I think everyone was kind of walking around like, oh, go to the parade ring, see him in, and all of a sudden there's only half a length at the line. So it was a gruelling race, a really gruelling race, and the connections of Romeo Coolio have always said it's all about Cheltenham for them, all about Cheltenham. He's had a fantastic season, but I think the campaigning they've had has minimised his chances of winning at Cheltenham, whatever race they go for.
Because?
Just too many hard races in a short period of time. I think in an Arkle, on a sharper track, I don't think that's going to suit him. I think he's a proper 3-miler for next year, and I don't think on the back of that they'll realistically send him to the Brown Advisory either. In an ideal world, he goes 2.5, probably Fairy House or Aintree. That's it, on to 3 miles next year. They're going to go to Cheltenham. They're adamant it's all about Cheltenham for them. I don't think he'll win there. But either way, he's probably the novice chaser I'm most excited about going into next season.
Okay. The only thing I'd say is I think we've got so used to people running their horses sparingly in preparation for Cheltenham that we do forget that horses sometimes actually benefit from hard races.
Yep.
And one of the reasons why Irish horses, I feel, have dominated over the last few years is because they have proper competitive races before the Cheltenham Festival, whereas our horses have, in the last decade or so, have tended to float around doing as little as possible in the build-up to the festival. So whilst I can appreciate some horses have a hard race and obviously it negatively affects it, I don't always think it's that cut and dried. And it is possible that some horses thrive on the tougher races and preparing them for a battle, as opposed to I'll just let you float around a 3-runner novice chase at Ludlow.
Yeah. You'd rather have actually a proper test to know where you stand than the opposite. But he backed up from Christmas as well. He crawled in to get home from Irish Panther. I don't think back-to-back is an ideal preparation, but it's probably still a better preparation than Kopek de Boord's going to have. Very opposite ends of the spectrum there.
What did you make of his finishing effort? I mean, Dan refers to it. Most people would have turned around after halfway up the run and gone, well, he just got away with that. And he did just get away with it, but not quite in the manner that they might have thought 50 yards before the line.
Yeah, I thought it was idling on account of the horse and jockey as opposed to tiredness late on, if I'm being honest. I think Jack, when you look at the head on, he's literally looking at the screen the whole time, puts his stick down, and it was actually probably quite a blessing that he'd gone across to the rail, so Cargies had to switch around to try and get round him. But the thing I was underwhelmed about was his jumping. I thought that was his huge positive of all of his runs over fences. And I thought, yeah, Jack, down the back, you've done exactly the right thing. Eyeballer, I thought he was a more astute jumper than what she was going into it. And she out-jumped him down the back. And that would be a slight worry, is whether he'd get too far back in an Arkle if he's going to make those mistakes. Because going into it, I was then making the case, there's 8 hurdles in a Supreme, there's 12 in an Arkle. Jumping is his main advantage over his rivals, whereas that slightly let me down for that. So it wasn't his finishing effort that put me off. It was that his jumping had slightly gone backwards.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And when we talk about the next race, you see what happens when a horse that's highly rated puts in an awkward jump, puts them on the back foot against a horse who's travelling well, as she was, Gargese, against him, and then she's able to maintain that. One horse couldn't manage it. Romeo Coolio, that's final demand, we'll talk about him in a minute, but Romeo Coolio did actually get the better. I thought ultimately, in trying circumstances, and I know I'm a fan of his, so I'm slightly biased, but I thought in trying circumstances, he's done extremely well to win. I'm going to ask you both about the Arkle picture now. Lulamba is 5-4 favourite. Kopek de Boord is now 7-2. Romeo Coolio 4-1. Cargese 5s. Irish Panther 14s. Mambo number 5 16s, and then Kappa J Pike and July Flower 6 Mile Bridge. Not sure which race he'll go for, but we'll talk about him maybe a little bit later. Are you thinking that Lulamba can see off? Well, I mean, is it going to be Kopek de Boord and Romeo Coolio? Will Romeo Coolio definitely go for the Arkle? I mean, what would you do?
I think they're sort of now saying it's ground dependent. If it's anywhere soft-ish, I think it'll be the Arkle. I think that's the more logical route at this stage, if they're so adamant about going down this. I think at this stage, I'd probably just chance the genius of Willie Mullins on Kopek de Boord. I admire Lulamba. He's had the better preparation. Whether we see him this weekend, I'm not sure. I just trust in Willie Mullins' ability and his ability as a horse. And all what he's shown, he's not beginner's chase, all his novice hurdle form by the end of the season last year, that he could still be just a cut above. And you're getting now a little bit of a price to compensate, only half a point shorter than Romeo Coolio, who I really wouldn't touch for an Arkle at this stage.
Okay. What about you?
I might even charge Cargese, to be honest. I think we might look back at this race and go, actually, that was, even though it was only a 3-runner race and the two are pulled miles clear, I think we might look back at it and go, actually, that was a strong contest.
Does that not make Irish Panther, though, also probable, given similar kind of proximity to Romeo Coolio. And he's 14 to 1, you say?
14s.
Yeah, quite possibly. But I like the fact that Cargill's had that Cheltenham form going into it.
Yeah.
And arguably, I'd probably say Cheltenham would suit her, maybe more than Leopardstown. I don't know. I'm just the Arkle is something that I just keep going round and round in circles,
100%.
and I think I probably still will up until Tuesday morning.
I'm with you though. I'm hoping that Romeo Coolio jumps better wherever he goes. That wasn't his best jumping performance, and I don't think that he's that bad a jumper. All the evidence prior to that suggested that he's a much better jumper than that. So hoping that with better jumping wherever he goes to Cheltenham, hopefully it's the Arkle for me. I think he can. I know, Dan, but I think he can. And the contrast between Romeo Coolio's performance with an indifferent jumping effort in comparison to Final Demand, who obviously was a very short price favourite to win his novice chase at the Dublin Racing Festival, is extraordinary. He actually, for the first part of the race, whilst he was jumping and travelling, it looked, this is going to be another exhibition, but he had a horse that travelled quite nicely alongside him. His jumping went slightly to pot, and the other horse kept travelling and jumping really well, K. Doughty.
Yeah, Romeo Coolio and Final Demand as probably two of the best novice chaser jumpers going into the Dublin Racing Festival, and they both let themselves down. The way that he made his mistakes makes me think there's a physical ailment there, and I don't think he's ran anywhere near his form. A lot of people are now capped in hindsight around the form with the New Lion and the Yellow Clay and what has he actually beaten, and actually I wasn't very impressed going into it, and has he got the attitude for a finish? And I do think it's gone slightly too over the top. Yeah. I agree, looking back, okay, 5 to 4 was probably too short from what he's actually achieved, but is 7 to 2 now too big? I mean, I made a case for Western Fold going into this race, but now looking at the current prices of 7 to 1 Western Fold and 7 to 2 Final Demand, I mean, there's only one bet that I'd want to have out of those, and it's Final Demand. I do think you've got to trust the genius of Willie Mullins, like Dan has just said with regards to Kopek de Board. You just got to think how lifeless Gaelic Warrior ran in this race and then went back to win an Arkle. And I do think you're going to get to a stage where everyone's going to be against Final Demand. And I do think if we get some positive updates about him going into the Cheltenham Festival, I do think he's a horse of immense potential. And I think quite a lot of people are quite short-sighted with regards to that.
The novice chase division requires quite a lot of heavy lifting for the genius of Willie Mullins with Kopek de Board. But how much does it need from Final Demand? I mean, what do you make of the performance? Do you think it was a physical thing? Do you think it was jumping, ground? What was it?
I wasn't one of those people in hindsight. I had questioned Final Demand going into this race. So I'm going to at least, I have said it out there, it's in the public domain. Oh, I know. But no, it's easy to say things after the race. And I'd always somewhat compared him in a way to Brave Man's Game, in that his main assets were cruising speed and jumping. Obviously his jumping fell apart, but I also somewhat questioned his aptitude for a real battle. He got into a real battle once at Cheltenham and he kind of let himself down. And you can make other reasons for why that happened on the day. Quick ground, more of a test of speed, not really for him. Here he just had another rival who was of a high enough calibre to kind of jump alongside him. And when he was getting half-lengthed, it quickly soured on him and it went from mistake 1 to 2, twisting in the air. That may be a physical issue. I'm sure more will come out of the wash about that. But personally, unlike Steve, I couldn't entertain him for this round advisor anymore. I think this is now actually a really interesting competitive race, and Kate Dorsey's now right up there, 9-2. But also, despite his incident the weekend, Kids Boohal is no back number either, in that obviously he beat Kate Dorsey on Chase debut and looked ultra impressive the time before that. One novelty mistake doesn't dispel him being a complete back number, and he's 10 to 1. Western Fold, another one. Grade 1 open company form brings into the race. Now, we talked about earlier, more questions and answers. This is another prime example of it, but it makes for a brilliant race.
Yeah, it really does. At the moment, Final Demand's a 7-2 favourite. K. Doughty 9-2. The Big Westerner 5-1. Wendigo, who won at Ayr last week, obviously a nothing race really. 8-1 along with Western Fold. Kids Ball, as you mentioned, 10s. Cocktail Divan 12s. Romeo Coolio 12s. 6 Mile Bridge 12s. So Salva 16s. It's a very exciting race now. At one point, it did look rather dull when Final Demand had won his first 2 races of offences. You've got a shorty here. But actually, with that defeat, it's made it really interesting. we can open up the floor now to both of you for anything else, because I'm sure there'll be others that caught your eye over the weekend. What would you like to mention?
I'll just go for a few. Madara is the first place to start with a nice run at Kempton, and as someone who has been on the plate wagon for a couple of weeks, that was perfectly what I wanted to see. Yeah, I mean, he's got the Cheltenham form in the book. It was his target last season, got injured, a couple of runs this year, set him up perfectly for that. The fact it's on the old course versus the new, I don't think is ideal for him, but he's going to have the perfect preparation for it. Win Some, Lose Some, I thought ran a really nice race at the DRF in that handicap in the manner of a horse who could well be something for like an Irish national. Handled the heavier ground than perhaps I probably expected him to, and poor old Waterford Whispers back in third. He's broken my heart before. I didn't get suckered in this time. I was looking at the board pre-race, 6-1. Yeah. Sure, if it was 16s, I may be prepared to have the pain again, but not at 6s. I think he'll just continue to do that. Mercia in the 2-mile handicap hurdle, she got a pound back from the handicapper, down to 139. But she put in a very fair performance, one for a county hurdle, and Hello Neighbour in behind, another one in that vein. And then I thought Adrigor, you could upgrade what he did in the Barberstown Castle. I thought Owen Staples maybe just got there a little bit too soon. He almost jumped his way into the lead and set himself up to be a bit vulnerable. He'd already had a sight around Cheltenham earlier in the season in October. He looked pretty progressive before that and was winning at a time where the Cromwell team weren't firing at all. So he could still have a bit more to offer. And he also pays a compliment to Release the Beast as well. Another one for the Grand Annual, who should have finished close to him at Christmas. He'll now go there to the Grand Annual, I think, with a fair chance. And they're 16 or 21 the pair.
Okay. Steve, what else would you like to mention?
Back Me or Sack Me was one of my best bets over the Christmas period in the Paddy Power. And obviously just got left at the start and pretty much had no chance from there. I thought.
Please tell me you had a little.
I did.
Well done.
The 2-mile 5 I thought was a bare minimum here, and the National Hunt Chase has been muted for him, and he snuck in here at the bottom of the weights, and I imagine he'll probably do the same in the National Hunt Chase, and I'd give him a good chance there. Bowen's on Fire. I'd backed for the Martin Pipe pre-race in the hope that he'd kind of finish third or fourth, and obviously he's gone on to win, so I managed to cash that out. I imagine the county hurdle will be his next target, but I'm just slightly concerned at what the handicap is.
148 now, up 8.
Yeah, plus UK tax.
It's a big ask.
It's a huge ask, but he really caught my eye when he had a sighter behind Friendship there earlier on in the season. I thought, yeah, you're being lined up here, and it slightly surprised me that with those owners they didn't go straight there rather than taking in the DRF, and I think that probably gives us a hint that Gordon Elliott, even though he won't say it on television, is really going for this trainer's title over there, and I do think it is going to influence what's going to happen in Ireland for the remainder of the season. And then his for the champion bumper. I know he had the 1, 2, 3 in the Grade 2 bumper. I didn't think that was the strongest of contests, but he'd said pre-race that, is it Keep Him Company, the Giggerstown horse, was going to go straight there. Now he's won his 2 bumpers so far, including what looked a strong winner's bumper, and the fact that he was happy for him to go straight to the champion bumper. I think the fact that he had the 1, 2, 3 in, albeit a slightly weaker contest, would pay good compliments to him. I think he's around still 16-1 for the champion bumper. So Keep Him Company would be one to keep an eye on that hasn't ran at the DRF, but has kind of been boosted collaterally.
16-1 indeed.
That was a real talking horse bumper. There was 3 of them that were whispers everywhere you go. Yeah. These are proper, and in the end, it's a reverse forecast and 2 outsiders.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you both, when it comes to the bumper and the mayor's bumper the day before, quite a lot of people would have seen that the runner-up eased down just before the line, Moonvarian gets up. The idea of having a 50-yard marker, what's the point of that when you've got furlong poles all the way?
It's a fair question, but also it's so rarely ever an issue. Yeah. Like it always gets highlighted on the odd instance.
I know the jockey's at fault, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, and he's an amateur rider as well, and I think it was very unfortunate, but one mistake doesn't mean every 50-yard pole in the country now suddenly is ripped up. It's a good question why it is there. I wouldn't be aware of it. You'd think the furlong would be sufficient. But
that's the thing. Yeah. It's just, why have you got something else? If you got every furlong, you know that that's the last furlong. Then the next thing you see is the line.
Yeah. Seems more logical.
So, just any...
You didn't back the second, did you? Is that
why? No. Actually, I'm more annoyed about the ride that my horse got. It's only a game got in.
Yeah.
I mean, no pace and held up so far, but I thought he's run really well. It's only a game. Anyway, that was just me moaning. I'll only add Kim Rock, who I really like that horse. He's only had 3 runs now for Joseph O'Brien since he's come over from France. I thought he travelled and jumped pretty well. Actually, jumped much better until the last, but he didn't actually jump the last that well. On Sunday, there is a decent race to be won with him.
He might be one that they're hoping for a few pounds from the handicap, because I think he's going to struggle to actually get into some of those races. Looking at it, I know a few of those handicaps haven't filled previously at the Cheltenham Festival, but he was one when I was looking through the plate market. I was thinking you might not even get in.
He went up a pound.
Yeah.
Is he maybe a Topham horse rather than a Cheltenham horse?
He might be.
Cheltenham, he's been a bit so-so last couple of times. And
actually, maybe he doesn't jump Cheltenham as well. I mean, Cheltenham obviously is a stiff jumping track, so but I think maybe he's hasn't just improved.
Maybe
his jumping. It's got better. It was the best that he's done so far in his 3 runs for Joseph. So anyway, that's quite an extensive look back, but it certainly deserved it. The Dublin Racing Festival in particular. So that is this week's racing recap. Now, before we get into our weekend preview, just to let you know that our sponsor Bet365 have a best odds guaranteed offer. It's available at every single UK and Irish race from 8 a.m. on the day of the race. If you take a price and the SP is bigger, Bet365 will pay you at the bigger odds. Full T's and C's can be found on the website. So we're going to have a look ahead to what's coming up this weekend. Newbury is the main focus of attention, and the Denman Chase is the race that I think a lot of people will be hoping that maybe we'll see Django Bay, who's the 11 to 10 favourite with Bet365. Haiti Calor 6 to 4, Lompresse 130, and then 16 to 1 bar, the top 3. I'm not entirely certain that we'll see Django Bay because of the ground. I think it's soft, heavy in places at Newbury at the moment as we record this.
Yep.
And there is more rain forecast this week.
It's heavy in places, hurdles, soft all over on the chase course. But as of a few hours ago, it was 25 mil due over the next few days. And if you saw Nicky Henderson's interview on Racing TV, it didn't seem overly confident that he wants to give these horses a real hard race on heavy ground going into March. So I think the chances of us seeing him are diminishing with every drop we see. Haiti Calors, the comments around him would also slightly put me off, that obviously he was meant to go to the Irish Gold Cup, and then Curtis was all about travel's going to be an issue. And to be fair, this is only going to be a prep run for the Gold Cup anyway. Not what you ever want to hear if you're thinking about taking 6 to 4 about a horse before a big race. So almost by default, I think Lompresse at 10 to 3 comes into it. It's, yes, the yard are not firing, but he's still bang up to his best behind Spillane Tower on worse terms. We know he handles conditions. Yeah. They're also saying Cheltenham is still the plan. At his age, that's not going to be where he wins. But a race like this that may cut up slightly, where probably the best horse in the race in Django Bay may go elsewhere, and Haiti Claus is fully focused on March, this could be an ideal opportunity for Lompresse. And 10 to 3 is a very fair price right now, I think.
I'm with you. I like Lompresse for the race, based on a sort of eliminating what else is in the race. Yeah,
I went through kind of trying to eliminate them as well. I tried to give leave of absence a case, really, 2 from 2 in Newbury in his career, but my concern is that the poor run at Cheltenham when he was pulled up behind Wade out, they straight away came out and said, it was the ground was the reason why he ran poorly. You then got Master Chewy as well that you look at, was outclassed in the King George, and obviously has the option of the Game Spirit that he won last year, so you'd imagine he'd head there. And Haiti Calor, yes, he handled obviously the ground in the Irish National. I then handled really fast ground in the Welsh National, and I did exactly what you've all done and kind of gone full circle. I think if Django Bay runs, I think he'll win.
Yeah.
But I think at current odds, 100 to 30, I'd definitely be with Lompresse. Yeah. Albeit that the drop in trick probably wouldn't suit him, but then you look at the conditions and you think, actually, you just want something that will just plough through the mud.
Yeah. I was looking through his form, so outside of Cheltenham, since he came to the UK, outside of Cheltenham, whereas obviously he's run some really good races, including winning at the festival. He's unbeaten on left-handed tracks. He's 3 from 3 on left-handed tracks. So I think flat left-handed tracks probably suit him even better.
Yeah.
You think he's won, at Newcastle in the rehearsal carrying top weight. Yeah. So I'm keen on him. Obviously, I'm with Steve that if Django Bay runs, I'll respect him and stand aside. But if he doesn't, we're back in. Okay. The Game Spirit. Now, again, I don't know what's going to run in here because obviously Lulamba may or may not run. And Lulamba and Steel Ally have entries in the Game Spirit and the Kingmaker on the weekend. So this is a guessing game a little bit.
Yeah, it is. I looked at Saint Segal and, beaten 10 lengths by Thistlearse. Doesn't look too badly in hindsight given how he ran in the Tingle Creek. Meet Me by the Sea is the really fascinating entrant, though. Yeah. Like, he should be 6 over 6 out of 6 under rules. His only defeat came in a slow motion finish in that EBF final when ran down by Lawrence Bay at Sandown. That was his only start over 2.5 miles. Now, he never wins by far, hence the reason why he's only rated 139. But I have no doubts that he's a graded level chaser. It's just whether they allow him the opportunity to run in this graded level chase as opposed to trying to exploit that handicap mark any further. But I think this is going to be one of those races that they look at late on with regards to declarations, because I don't know what price he is currently.
Unfortunately, I can't access a price on him for the race at the moment.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought he was probably the most interesting coming into it.
Okay.
Yeah,
what do you like?
he is, and if he's one of those who might end up in the Jack Richards rather than a graded race at this stage, but he's a lovely horse. Like you, Steve, I ended up just looking at Santiago and thinking this could just be a golden opportunity for him, and he's been the most frustrating horse in his earlier careers. Every time a big 2.5 mile handicap chase on this kind of track, he was always favourite and he always found a way to ruin it, but he's almost found his niche now as just an attacking 2-mile 2 horse, and as Steve mentioned, the form of what he's achieved this season looks rock solid in the context of this race. And where Lalamba's unlikely to go, you're looking at Master Chewy and Liberty Hunter, who've been really sort of patchy in the last year or so as main opposition, the 1-2 from last year. Again, I think Santiago could just be his race to lose, go from the front, and there might not be anything of real interest in behind him to challenge him.
Where do you think Steel Ally is going to run? Do you think he'll definitely go to Kingmaker if he runs?
I'd say so, yeah. You're not going to avoid soft ground anywhere because Warwick's going to get a load of rain and they're soft all over too. So it won't be ground contingent. And it will, obviously, there'll be a lot of late-minute jockeying for position here with Lalamba and co. It's going to be tricky. Because
he obviously started off in that graduation race against season horses like Unexpected Party and Parter, etc. And then he jumped really well at Ascot, didn't he? I thought, if anything, it might be worth taking a risk, depending if, again, keep your eye on the entries where if Lalamba's in or out and see where he's going. I thought
he'd also be giving a few pounds to everything, though, Steel Ally in this race as the penalty structure, which really isn't ideal for a novice with 2 starts. So a lot of last-minute fingers on buttons on the BHA admin site, I dare say.
Let's talk about the big handicap hurdle on the weekend at Newbury. Now, Let It Rain is the 11-4 favourite. All in You 4-1. On Sans La Vie is 9-2. Lanesborough 8-1. Tutti Quanti 8-1. Hot Fuss 10s. Dance and Glance 12s. 16 Serious Challenge. The Hardest Geezer 16s. Helmvine 20s, along with Wellington Arch. And 25-1 bar those. Again, I find this race really difficult because it always is. A lot of people were keen on Sans La Vie because obviously his form's got a significant amount of boost recently. Yeah,
he was obviously second behind Old Putt Star, trying to give him £6. That makes him look well handicapped for this. Obviously, the stable have won this with a couple of novices previously, haven't they? Bally Andy and Al Dancer previously. So, and you kind of saw from how he was ridden and entered up recently that this has kind of been the long-term target for him. Let It Rain handled soft ground at Ascot last time. Whether you want a sexy traveller on real heavy ground in a Betfair hurdle, I'm not so sure. And I imagine anyone that's been taking the short prices on her anti-post will be slightly worried ahead of actually going to post. All in You ran really well on his 2 starts for Warren Greytrex. Tutti Quanti was really impressive, winning the Jerry Fielden over this course and distance in November. But the more I went down the list, I've gone for Go Dante at 50-1. Now, I know that the Imperial Cup is going to be his main aim in a month's time, but he finished 3rd in this behind Iberico Lord on heavy ground 2 years ago, finished 7th behind Joyeuse in it last year. He beat another Sandown specialist in Knickerbocker Glory earlier on this season in soft ground at Sandown off a mark of 130. I think he's off 133 here. And I just think the fact that he'll handle conditions will bring him into the race, and I think he'd probably be one that could sort of plod on into the places at around 50-1, because I do think this is going to be hard work up that straight.
All right, 33s with that 365, but a very interesting shout. Do you see a big play here? Or
I'll see and match your 33s with Mildam at the same price. Wow. So if we're looking at heavy ground specialists, there is no bigger heavy ground specialist than Mildam. Like, all his wins are at least on soft, most of them on heavy. You could put a line for his first couple of runs this season on quick ground, and actually showed a fair bit more at Windsor last time, where again, it wouldn't have been anywhere near slow enough. Only a pound above his last winning mark. And after that day, Gavin Sheehan got off him, and it was actually still heavy ground at Haydock. He said, this still wouldn't be heavy enough. Yeah. What he really wants is 2 miles, real galloping track on heavy, heavy ground. That's all coming together here. Tends to go from the front as well. And it's one of those, these kind of races, a bit like we saw at the weekend. Who's going to handle conditions best rather than who is the best handicapped?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think a big price is more likely than the majority to at least give his running.
Okay. I'm going to go for Hot Fuss, who obviously beat Willful and Go Dante at Windsor, amongst others. Obviously, Steve Mellish is often on this show, and he and I have been talking about Hot Fuss all through the season, talking about the way they ride this horse and the fact that he doesn't have to be ridden aggressively. And he was given a slightly more, not overtly more, but a slightly more patient ride at Windsor last time, where he didn't actually lead. He just sat just off the leaders. And then he got into a battle with Willful and was going away from him at the end, and he won very comfortably. He's got the £5 penalty, but he looks like the sort of horse who will relish this attritional test. You know, a big field. He's very brave. I think at Sandown the time before, he'd have probably gone quite close had he not made a bad mistake at the last. So I think the £5 penalty isn't too much of a concern. So at 10-1, he was the horse that I was keen on. There's obviously other good racing elsewhere. Is there anything else that you'd like to pick up on before we get our best bets?
Yeah, just a quick scan through. I think the listed bumper is always one to keep an eye on at Newbury. It's always a race that works out well. See base hunters in there for the Gordon. Whether they're going to run him on heavy ground, I'm not sure. The other one in there is Leroy Remy for Tom Ellis, who they think an awful lot of and was really impressive despite being incredibly babyish on his bumper debut. So that's more a race to just watch, maybe with a view to novice hurdlers next year. Kingston Queen's got a couple of entries, and I'm not losing any faith in her for trying to take on Old Park Star at Cheltenham in a race where I thought she'd actually be very competitive. Softer ground up in trip, could be the Jane Seymour, could be Open Company at Warwick either way. I think either way she goes, still have to keep her on side. And then lighting up our days for Alistair Ralph has got a couple of entries as well, and he obviously had a big weekend as well with a double in big races. He ran a really good race at Hereford on his reappearance in a race that's worked out very well. Came from nowhere, was the winner, won again next time out. The second was won next time out, and the fourth was a dual novice hurdle winner. That was a massive run. He's got 2 entries, just to keep an eye out for him.
All right. Steve, what
else? Kingston Queen was the only one. Obviously, the Jane Seymour's now moved from the Sandown card over to Warwick. So, yeah, you're going to need to handle the ground in order to there. So, yeah, it'll be interesting.
Well, one of my favourite horses has got an entry in that, and also in the Mayor's Novice Chase, the listed Mayor's Novices Chase at Exeter on Sunday. That's Hollygrove Cha-Cha. I know this is, but I did say it at the time, I don't know why she ran at Windsor. Windsor would be one of the last tracks she would run at. And even though she travelled okay, as soon as they started upping the tempo, you could see it put her under pressure. Her jumping wasn't as good as it was before. She's going back. Hopefully, I'm thinking she's going to run on Sunday and go back to Exeter where she beat Bluey the time before. So I'm hoping she goes there. And if she does, I would be keen on her. If she goes for the hurdle race, I'll be less so. And the other horse I wanted to mention was Nappers Hill, who's going to run in the Veterans Chase. He's been asked 2 very big questions so far this season since his long layoff. First time, obviously, up at Haydock against the Jukebox Man, which was always going to be tough for him. Yep. And then he ran over 3 miles behind Confusion and Marble Sands at Weatherby in the Roland Merrick, but that was over 3 miles, and actually he ran well for a long way before he checked out. He's going back to 2.5 miles for the Veterans Chase at Warwick, so I'll be keen to give him another chance. So those are a couple more names to put into the hat for the weekend. Now, before we get our best bets of the weekend, just to let you know of a free-to-play 6 horses challenge. It is available every weekend with free spins on offer if you get 2 or 3 selections correct. The prize pools are available for 5 and 4 correct predictions, as well as a jackpot for all 6. Now it's time for our best bets of the weekend. And Dan is our guest, so Dan goes first.
And I'm immediately going to take you on in that veterans race with good old Lamilos, who won the race last year, and that was an emphatic performance for just £1 higher. First few runs this season, bit hit and miss, but you look at last year, it was also a very similar story, and it was a big step forward second to Nocte Velatus last time out on 3 miles. And I think in this day and age, despite his advancing years, he's best over an intermediate trip and an aggressive ride at a track like Warwick, where we saw last year, who puts them all under pressure because his jumping is still immaculate. I say, I'm hoping the cheek pieces go back on. I'm hoping it's a return to front running. I think he's 11-4, and if he does turn up in the same form as last year, I think it'd be hard to beat.
He is indeed. 11:04 for the middle distance veterans handicap chase on Saturday at Warwick. Steve?
Yeah, I always think headgears are big for the Skeltons. I'm hoping that goes back on Madara for Cheltenham. And I was thinking the same. I really fancied Lamilos last time and they didn't put the headgear on. And I kind of thought, where is the big target? So yeah, I'd be with Dan for that. My best bet current prices would be Persad in that Denman Chase, to be honest. I know we're all keen on him. I just think he's the one guaranteed to run, guaranteed to handle conditions, and I thought 130, that was a big price.
Okay, and I'm going to go for Hot Fuss in the big handicap hurdle. Why not? I think he can run a big race. I think the style, the conditions of the race will be right up his street. Nothing tougher in the race, and I don't think the £5 penalty is that punitive for a horse that won in the style that he did against a horse in Wilful who's got some really good form amongst 2 mile hurdlers. So he would be my selection in that handicap hurdle. On
2 11-year-olds and the hottest race of the day for our best bets. Good luck,
Put him in a
gents.
treble.
In fairness, I'm also with Persad, and I was also keen on Nafas Hill. So we've got every base covered in that. Dan, thanks a lot for coming in and joining the team.
Pleasure as always.
It's been great catching up. Are you out and about racing this weekend? Did you do your running?
I think I need a bit of time between my races these days. I'll be in the Racing TV studio next Friday and the Friday after. And so, but for now on course, I'm going to have a bit of a sedentary time of things after an eventful weekend.
And Steve?
I should be at Sandown on Friday, hopefully. It's obviously all really switched to an all chase card. So hopefully all 6 races do come on.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you both. Thank you for watching as well. Don't forget, if you like what you've seen or heard in this or any of our previous podcasts, and leave a kind review in the comments section. No need to mention about how many times I mentioned Bet365, because guess what? This has been Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by Bet365 in association with oddschecker. So thanks very much to the team, to Dan and to Steve. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next week when Aidan Coleman's going to be here to help us preview the Ascot Chase and the Kingwell Hurdle. Until then, bye-bye.